So in today's session, I'll be talking a little bit about the hypothesis very briefly. Then one of the major concepts which you all see when you undertake any research study, especially the quantitative studies, is the hypothesis testing. As you see on the screen, very simple that way. If you undertake any research work, this is how it is going to flow. Your steps, this is how you will move forward, you will do the research work. By that I mean the first step is going to be the identification of the variable or problem. So you will definitely come out with, will formulate a problem, and on that problem you will be working or you will be researching. Selecting a variable, then you will be writing the title of your research work. Then in continuation to that, you will also formulate the objectives or research questions. And both is not that way very much required. Either you should have a research objective or research question. So that is going to be the first step. The second step is the formulation of hypothesis, as you see on the slide. I hope you could make out this is going to be a very important step in the case of research when you undertake any research work. And I have written it is going to be optional. Sometimes in qualitative studies we don't generally formulate the hypothesis. So that's why you are seeing like it is going to be an optional step. But of course in the quantitative studies, if you are undertaking any quantitative work, it is going to be one of the major steps, the formulation of hypothesis. So that is going to be the second step. The third is data collections. Once you have that objectives and hypothesis, the next task, as you see on the slide, is going to be the data collection stage, which includes many steps like you are sampling what is going to be your population. From population, how you are going to select the samples, then how you are going to collect the data from the samples that you have selected. In sciences we use the term instrument, while in social sciences it is going to be tool, research tool. Then the methodology, how you are going to collect data, how you are going to collect the data in your research work. So the data collection includes all those. The next is, once you collected the data, the next step is going to be the analysis of the collected data. Once that is done, the final stage is going to be the research reporting or writing of your research work. So that is going to be the fifth step. So if you see, the major steps are, one is identifying the problem, then formulating objectives, and then the hypothesis. Then it is going to be data collection and data analysis, and finally it is reporting. So if you see, when we were discussing about the steps in research, one of the steps I was saying, the second step is formulating the hypothesis. Then we should also understand what is an hypothesis. See, there can have any kind of a tentative guess from your side about the solution of the problem that you undertake. Say for example, I will make it very simple and brief. That way, see, if I am working on the stress and academic achievement of the students, so I can come out with some kind of a guess or a kind of a tentative answer such that the stress may affect the academic achievement of the students. So it can be, maybe it can increase the academic achievement, it can be the other way around also, it can decrease, or there is no relation between stress and academic achievement. So what all things which I was saying, like it can improve the academic achievement, it can reduce the academic achievement, yeah, there is a relation between academic achievement and stress. So that kind of a guessing from the researcher part is going to be what we call the hypothesis. And in the previous couple of sessions, I have discussed about how the hypothesis has to be generated. There are a couple of ways and bases which you need to consider, when you formulate the hypothesis. You cannot just for the sake of formulating hypothesis, you cannot formulate the hypothesis that way. So if you see a simple kind of a definition, which is like a tentative solution of the problem, or it is going to be an intelligent guess about the solution of the problem. So this is what the hypothesis. Now if you talk about the forms of hypothesis, as you see on the slide, there are two types. One is the null hypothesis and the other is alternate hypothesis. So what happens, one of the bases for formulating the hypothesis is, say for example, if nobody has conducted any research work on the stress and academic achievement, which is not the case in reality, but if you undertake a study which no one has conducted before, then it is always good to formulate the null hypothesis, because you don't have any clue about how the solution, how the result of your research study is going to be. So in that case, it is going to be a good selection that you formulate a null hypothesis. So if that is the case, in the case of the example which I was quoting, like stress and academic achievement, you will formulate a null hypothesis like there is no relation between, there is no effect of stress and academic achievement. So that no word means null, nothing. So there is no relation between stress and academic achievement. There is no effect of stress and academic achievement. So this is how the null hypothesis has to be formulated. Now see, in most of the studies, when you formulate a null hypothesis, by default the alternate hypothesis also will follow, but some of the researchers usually don't write that, but by default it will be there. I mean, like when you formulate a null hypothesis like there is no effect of stress on academic achievement, there is no relation of stress and academic achievement, there is no relation between stress and academic achievement, then there is a hypothesis which says there is a relation between the stress and academic achievement. So that hypothesis is going to be the alternate hypothesis. And when you formulate the alternate hypothesis, we can like formulate in different ways, like we can give a direction also. The stress improves the academic achievement, the stress reduces the academic achievement. So that gives a kind of a direction to the hypothesis. So friends, what I was saying is, see, you formulate a null hypothesis, then by default the alternate hypothesis will follow. But there are like researchers where we will come out with what kind of a null alternate hypothesis also. So this is how in general we do when we undertake any research study. So if that is the case, if we have a hypothesis in our study research work, then the next step is going to be the what we call the hypothesis testing. See, what is that? To test whether the null hypothesis, which says there is no difference or no effect between the variables, can be rejected or not rejected. See, this is what the purpose. We have an hypothesis in our study and we are going to test it. So that step is known to be hypothesis testing. Usually in science subject and all, we have the laboratories to do that, but in social sciences we don't have that kind of a laboratory arrangements which would help us to test our hypothesis, like the one which I was pointing out. So in that case, what we do, we will depend on the statistical methods, statistical techniques. If I say one example, like the example which I was saying, there is no effect of stress and academic achievement. So whether I can retain that hypothesis or whether I can, whether I have to reject that hypothesis, this is, performed, this is decided by doing this hypothesis testing. Now, there are a couple of steps in the hypothesis testing. One of the steps is the first one is hypothesis formulation, which we have already seen. We will go with the null hypothesis or the alternate hypothesis. So first, state your research hypothesis as a null hypothesis and alternate hypothesis. So as I said, in some of the thesis we will not be seeing that, but it follows by default that way. So we will come out with a null hypothesis in our research work. Then, as I said, the next is going to be the data collection. So we will collect the data in a way designed to test the hypothesis. So there can have variables when we formulate the hypothesis. We also, it is written by including the variables which are there in our study. The example I was saying, like stress and academic achievement. So they are the variables in my study. So not to collect the data relating to the stress, I have to collect the data. Academic achievement also is one of the variables in my study. So I have to collect the data on the academic achievement also. So that is going to be the second step. The third is a statistical test, as you see on the slide. You decide on the the statistical technique or the statistical test. So that is going to be the third step. Perform an appropriate statistical. You select it and do the statistics. The next is set the level of significance. See, we need to have be aware about something called the level of significance. So that is one of the terms which we need to know, we need to be aware of when you do the research work, when we do specifically the hypothesis testing, that is the level of significance. So when we do the hypothesis testing, we will have one level which would help us to decide whether we have to reject or not reject. See, I am purposefully using that word not reject because usually in research work we don't use the word accept. Usually it comes that way, reject or accept. But in research field we don't make use of the word the accept, that word the accept, because there can have we are not undertaking the research work on a big sample. A couple of selected samples we will be working on. So we cannot that way very much generalize the result that we get from our research work. So usually we don't use the word accept. In place of that we will use the term not reject. Okay, so reject or not reject. So that rejection or not rejection, or if I put it I mean like in a casual way we say reject or accept, that will be decided looking at the level of significance and the next one, the p-value. So we will have a p-value, then we will see the level of significance, accordingly a conclusion will be drawn. So friends, see, usually if I say an example for a survey study like stress and academic achievement which I am going to undertake, then the hypothesis can be there exists no significant effect. So we specifically write that word the significant. There are many tests of significance or significant tests. See, there are many methods through which the significance can be tested. These are also known as tests of significance or significance test. And you should take your attention to the point which is given as the second point. In statistics, significance means not by chance or probably true. Highly significant means highly probable. So as I said, we have an example like there exists no significant effect of stress and academic achievement. There exists no significant relationship between stress and academic achievement. If this is the null hypothesis, then after conducting the research data collection and doing the statistical test, we will see whether it can be rejected or not rejected. So that is significant. If you are coming out with a result like we have to reject the null hypothesis, then that result is going to be significant. This is the most probable thing which comes in my result. This is not by any chance. This is purely because of my research work. So this is going to be true. Again, the opposite case also, if my hypothesis is not rejected, the first one was rejecting. If it is not rejected, if I come out with such kind of a result which says that I cannot reject my null hypothesis, then that is also significant. As a researcher, I would say my result is significant. This is not because of any chance. I have conducted a complete very technically, logically sound research work, and this is going to be true in my research work. This you can generalize, no issue. That is going to be significant. So that's why we use that word significance, and that's how the research hypothesis is also written. Let me again focus on that point. Like if the null hypothesis is like there exists no significant relationship between stress and academic achievement, we put that word significance because this is not because of any chance I am getting this result which makes me to reject the hypothesis. This is not because of any chance. This is purely because of my research work, and this is going to be a true result. And same with the case of not rejecting the hypothesis also. So if you see in research, you will see many significance tests like t-test, ANOVA, correlation, regression, and there are many such significance tests. I was also talking about something called the level of significance. What does that mean? See, level of significance, if you see the third point, the level of significance is the measurement of statistical significance. So I was saying significance not because of any chance, it is purely because of the research work, and it is going to be the most probable result. So how we decide that? That we decide looking at some kind of a level of significance, which we also correlate with something called the level of confidence, which I would discuss after this slide. So this is going to be the level of significance determines whether the outcome of hypothesis testing is statistically significant or otherwise. So that level would help us to test the results are statistically significant or not. Now, see, there are 2-3 major levels of significance in research work, specifically in social science research. We fix that level of significance at 1% or 5%. If it is social science research, it is normally at 5%. By that I mean, see, if your result comes out to be rejecting or not rejecting hypothesis, whatever the case may be, if that is the case, if you are fixing the level of significance at 5%, or in other terms we can call it as 0.05 level of significance. If you are fixing the level of significance at 0.05, and if you convert that into percentage, it comes to be 5%. So then it is associated with something called the level of confidence also. So if you are fixing at 0.05 level of significance, then you are 95% sure that, because it is at 5%, if you convert 0.05 level into percentage, it is going to be 5%. Then the remaining percentage, that is 95%. I mean, like in research, it means that 95% you are sure that your results are significant. Only 5% you are not sure the result can be something else. If you are fixing the level of significance at 0.01 level, if you convert that into percentage, it is going to be 1%, which means that you are 99% sure that your results are okay. It's going to be absolutely true. Only 1% you are not sure about. So this is how we fix the level of significance. In social science, it is normally fixed at 0.05 level. If it is science researchers, we need very accurate results. Now, if it is a case of a medicine, if you are going to develop a new medicine, we have to be very sure about that medicine will cure some disease. So you have to be 99%. But in social sciences, we don't need that much accuracy, because all those are abstract concepts like motivation, intelligence, stress and all, which we don't like accurately we can measure all those values. So usually we fix at 0.05 level. Now the other term is p-value, which is like, again, a p-value is used hypothesis testing to help you support or reject the null hypothesis. See, when you do the significance test like t-test, ANOVA, ANCOVA, regression and all, you will get a value, p-value, and depending upon the p-value, you will decide whether you want to reject or accept the null hypothesis. If you put it in a simple words or common example, if you can cite, like you conduct an examination, those who cover or score more than 35% will be put into the pass category. Those who score less than 35 is put into something like the fail category. So that 35 mark is going to be something like a level which will help you to decide whether the student will pass or fail. So it is just like that. And if you want to decide that, you have to conduct the examination and the student has to score the mark. So this p-value is just like that. When you do the statistics, you will get a p-value, and depending upon the level of significance, you will decide whether you have to reject or accept or not reject the null hypothesis. So these are some of the very important points which you would come across when you test a hypothesis in research work. So friends, with this I would wind up this session. We have discussed about hypothesis testing, started with the basics of hypothesis, then we have extensively talked about the hypothesis testing, the steps involved in that, and some of the major points or concepts which you come across when you do hypothesis testing in the research